every soul, every beating heart, every nation and every tongue. Come find hope in the love of the Father. All creation will bow as one. Lift their eyes, see the risen sun. Jesus, Savior forever and after. This is love. Jesus came and died and gave His life for us. So let our voices rise and sing for all He's done. Our fear is overcome. Our God is love.
It's good to be back in America where I can get sweet tea and I can not sit in a room that is 150 degrees because they hate anything cool over there. But I tell you, it's good to be back. Really, for those that went on the trip, know that in our first service this morning, we were not able to show the video. We had some technical difficulties. So this is the first time that they are getting to see that video and those pictures. And I tell you, I loved putting that together. Loved going through the pictures of our trip. For those that don't know, and I see the information on the screen this morning, we have been in Romania, got back yesterday, rolled into the church just about 4 o'clock yesterday afternoon, and we had an incredible trip. I will tell you, as a church, you should be incredibly proud of the ones that went on this trip. Our students did a phenomenal job getting in and involving themselves in the culture and the children's lives and playing the games and doing everything that we did there. Our adults that went did the exact same thing. Just as the leader of the trip, I'm just incredibly thankful to everyone who went. We took a total of 27. Some of you knew that, but if you didn't, we took a total of 27. And we were able to do a lot of different things. This morning's service is going to look a little bit different. I've asked some of the ones that went on the trip to come and share a testimony with you this morning of how God used the trip in their lives. And what God did in the lives of the Romanians. And so we've got several that are going to come and do that this morning for a good portion of our message. But I want to share a verse of Scripture with you this morning as we start off. And it's in Matthew chapter number 28. It's a very familiar verse. It's a very famous verse. Most everyone will be at least somewhat familiar with it. But I love the fact that on Sundays, somewhere around the world, there are church services going on every hour of the day. Have you ever thought about that? Have you ever thought about right now, services are going on in Western Europe, services are going on in the East Coast. I've got friends that are in Korea right now, and this earlier or later today for us, they'll have services going on just every hour of the day. It just makes me wonder what it's like to be God and to hear the praises of His people all day for one day of a week. And I love it. You know, the Bible talks about how we are to reach all nations with the gospel of Jesus Christ. You go through and you look at the New Testament, you see what Jesus talked about while He was alive here on the earth, and everything was about reaching people with the gospel. And He gave us this commission, this mission in Matthew chapter 28, and He says this. It says, "And Jesus came and said to them, 'All authority in heaven and on earth has been given to me. Go, therefore, and make disciples of all nations.'" You know, we talk about mission trip, and we use the word mission trip. And if you've never really thought about mission trip and what that means, it's basically we are on mission from God to reach people for Jesus Christ. We go to other countries to share the gospel of Jesus, just like we share the gospel of Jesus Christ here. The same responsibility that you and I have here is the same responsibility that the church in Romania has to share the gospel of Jesus Christ with other people. And I love it because as you go through the New Testament, you really see that missions, the idea of reaching people for Christ, not only at home, but across the entire globe, is the mission of the church, and it's really the heartbeat of the church. This is the thing that is closer to God's heart than anything else, is reaching people all over the globe with the mission and the gospel of Jesus Christ. I love that we have the opportunities to go on trips and share Jesus with each other, or with other people. Tell you just about a few things that we did on our trip, and then we're going to invite Monica McCarty to come down and kick us off. But we started out basically throughout the week, we went to 3 different churches. We worked in 2 different orphanages. One of them doesn't have children yet. One of them does. Well, I'll share maybe a little bit more with you later this morning about that. But we went to a church in Severin, Romania. It's down on the Danube River. And if you have any kind of a decent arm and you like to throw rocks or whatever, you could throw a rock across the Danube and pretty much hit Serbia. We were right there on the border. Just a beautiful place down there. You're in the plains of Romania and the southern part. And we worked in a church there. It's a smaller church, a really nice building that they have, which is very uncommon for Romanian churches. But we had a youth service there on Tuesday night, and we invited people from the School of Music and Art. And Chris will tell you more about that here in a few minutes. But we invited, and we had like 35 to 40 visitors show up from the school. We had both professors and musicians and artists that go to this school. And we had 7 students saved that night and had a phenomenal, really a great time that evening. It's fun. If you ever want to see something funny, play a game that requires a Romanian to swing a baseball bat and try to hit a marshmallow. It was absolutely hilarious. But you know what? We had a great time. We worked in 2 other churches, one in the town of Rogova. Rogova is a unique community in Romania in a lot of different ways, but the poverty level is very high. But in this town, you have both the Roma people, who we would know of as the gypsy people, and you also have Romanians. Now, across Romania, there are very severe, we'll just say, race problems between those 2 groups of people. But very few places do Romanians and gypsies, the Roma people, live in unity. And this town is as close in Romania as you get. One of very few places that you see that. And so in the church, when these gypsy children and these Romanian children come in, it's amazing to see them on the same playing field. Because the thing that they have in common is how little they actually have. And it's amazing how when we are very similar with another group of people, it's the things that are similar that unites us, not the things that are different that divides us. And it's that way in this town. Got to visit with them and hang out with them. We did a kids club there. We got to do a lot of different things. They are in very severe need of a roof on that building. The roof was finished in like 1941, and there's holes in it and just falling down. But in this building, they are meeting every week. And every day, they feed 80 to 100 kids lunch every day in this town. Just an amazing ministry to these families there in Rogova. We went to Lupsha, and Dylan will tell you a little bit about Lupsha. The town of Lupsha is a very small community out in the country. So small, in fact, they don't even have a full school for the children that are there. They have a school that goes up through like their 4th class. And then the children have to be bused away to another community to go to 5th class, to like 5th and 6th class is what they call it, but 5th and 6th grade. And then they have to be bused to another community depending on what school they are chosen to go to. Not that they get to choose, but that's chosen for them on so many different levels. And so we got to go there to this small church in this small community and just see people who have absolutely nothing, and all they have is their faith. And they live it out in ways that I'm very jealous of, to be honest with you. It was just a wonderful trip. And so this morning, I was talking with Gary before we left, and he said, we were just talking about just having the opportunity for some of our people to come and share with you what God did in their lives on this trip. And as we think through this, I want you to understand, going back to Matthew 28, verses 19, and you go on and you read through verse 20, and you see that the heartbeat of God, the very mission that He gave us, is to go and share Christ with people. But what's amazing is when we go and do the thing that God has asked us to do, when we become obedient to share the gospel of Jesus Christ, not only are we doing what He wants us to do, not only can God use us in someone else's life, but it's amazing how God can take other people and make an impact and a difference in our life in sometimes some of the most unexpected ways. And this morning, I hope you get to experience some of that as we invite them up to come and speak. So I'm going to ask Monica McCarty to come on down, and I'm going to find you a microphone somewhere around here. Casey, can you help me out? Casey's got one for us right here. And so, thank you very much. Monica McCarty came on this trip with us. This morning we also have sharing with you Chris Strain, our principal from New Waverly High School. And we got Lily and Dylan Murphy are going to come up and share with you as well. But Monica, there you go.
I ran over last. service, so I'm going to try and shorten it this service. But I still have so much to share with you guys because it really was an amazing trip. I was in charge of the children's ministry part of it. And so we focused on Joseph, and we kind of had to do 2 and 1 real quickly, but there was 2 main verses that we studied. But before we get into that, I just want to give you a little history of Romania to understand where these children come from. Communists came in about 41, and they ruled until 89, and they took Bibles away from them. The priest of the Orthodox Church told them what they wanted to tell them, and so it may not have been biblical. So these kids have no idea. Their parents, their grandparents have no idea about Jesus Christ and what he did for us. And so the desire for them to learn is open. It's just teaching young kids. They're so wide-eyed and excited about learning about Christ. So they had never even heard of Joseph, most of them. I taught the older kids, and I asked them to raise their hand on who knew Joseph, and only 2 knew who Joseph was. If you ask someone here that goes to church regularly, most of them are going to know Joseph in the coat of many colors, but these kids have never heard that before because their parents and grandparents have never heard it before. So our first verse was Genesis 50, 19 through 20. But Joseph said to them, "Do not be afraid. I am in a place of God. You intended to harm me, but God intended it for good, to accomplish what is now being done in saving so many lives." And these children, they had no idea that Joseph had been through jealousy, through slavery, through imprisonment. And a lot of these kids experience that on a daily basis. They experience poverty and imprisonment through poverty. They have slavery because they don't eat meals every day. They go to this feeding center. Sometimes that's their only meal. So they understood what Joseph went through. But how he came out of it was, this is what God meant, and it was for good because I was able to save so many people. The last verse that we focused on was in Matthew, and it was about being faithful, which related to Joseph because he was very faithful. It was Matthew 25:21. His master replied, "Well done, good and faithful servant. You have been faithful with a few things. I will put you in charge of many. Come and share your master's happiness." These kids were so happy that we were there. They were so excited. And to know that God can put them in charge of something, they loved the idea of that. And so they just wrapped their arms around us. They had dirty fingers and clean faces. Mamas went in and cleaned their faces, but they don't take baths every day, so they smelled a little bit different than we do. But we loved them because they loved us. They welcomed us in with open arms and made us feel right at home. And when I mean at home, it was a church, but it was also a play area because some days it rained. And so we were playing in the sanctuary, or on the pews, under the pews, these little kids running around, blue eyes and light-colored curly hair to dark eyes and dark straight hair. It was just phenomenal to see the work that they did with us, much less what we did with them. It was just neat to see some of the people that came out of their shell in Romania and hopefully can carry that back here in the States. People that helped with us with the arts and craft, Julia and Kristen, really stepped up and helped me make this happen. But the best thing to see were the games. The kids loved games. Balloons were their friends. They wanted to take them home with them, and if you know me, I don't like balloons, so I was like, ah. But the balloons, they just loved games and loved how the games related to the stories, and it was just impressionable for me because here in the States, we take that for granted. Kids expect these games to be part of the lessons. Vacation Bible School, it's not just about the story, it's about what am I getting out of this? And the kids, it wasn't that way. They loved every minute of it. By the end of the lesson, we were asking the kids questions, what did they learn? So it went from 2 to almost all of them raising their hand. They wanted to answer the question because they just absorbed it and learned it, and they knew the answers. It was so fun to see the excitement that they had for that. So that's what we did. But let me tell you what I got out of it. My grandparents passed away years ago, so I've been without. And at two of the churches, there were a bunch of older people. And the Ethan Orthodox, they wear veils and little shawls over their heads. So you see these little grandmas, and they're about this tall. And they just pulled me in and loved me. It was so warm. The children did a lot for me, but the older parents and grandparents, they walked these steep hills on a Sunday, every week basis to get to church so they can worship. And then they took this stranger, this middle-aged woman, and just loved her. We couldn't speak because we didn't know the language, but they made me feel so at home. And then their services, 2 to 3 hours long, because they don't have small Bible group. The kids did phenomenal. You know, my little one, it would not be that easy. It would be very difficult, but as a congregation, they worked with the kids. Not only the moms took care of them, but other moms and grandmas and aunts and uncles or whoever was in the community helped with these kids so they could sit there through a 2 to 3 hour service. And prayer time wasn't just one person getting up and speaking. It was multiple people that said prayer. The pastor would say, 4 people pray. And so it would go through, and 4 people through the congregation prayed. And nothing was translated into English for us. It was all in Romanian. And I'm sitting there, and I found myself saying amen to prayers in Romanian. I had no idea what was going on or what was being said, but just the Holy Spirit moved me in a way that I felt connected with these people. Here in the States, you know what people are saying, and you feel moved, but in a way where you don't understand. Was so impressionable. I will never forget those things. And lastly, I got to share this with my son. My son just turned 13, and he's becoming a man. And seeing him play with the youth and interact with the youth and interact with the children was phenomenal. Our youth were by far the best group of youth we could have gone with. They didn't care that the kids stunk. They didn't care that they were dirty. They didn't care that they couldn't speak. And I was proud to see that my son was right there with those youth group, with our youth group, interacting with these kids. So thank you for praying for us and allowing people to come on this trip with us.
I'm going to ask Chris Strain to come up, and as he comes up, I'd just like to say thank you as well to everyone who gave sacrificially. I know we had a number of people from the church come together to help some of our people go on this trip, and I just want to say thank you to everyone there. Just one thing on what Monica said there. The church there really gave new meaning to the idea that it takes a village to raise a child. And they really put that in play in a lot of different ways, and it was very important for our group to see. Chris had a unique experience that he's going to get to tell you about here, and very thankful that he was able to go with us as well.
Well, good morning, everyone. I want to, again, thank you all for allowing us the opportunity to do this. Thanks, Craig, for volunteering me to come up here and speak. Throughout this trip, one of the things I kind of start off with this morning, I was struggling with what I had to say. What could I say up here when I came up here? Craig told me, or asked me, prior to us leaving Romania, if I would come up here and give a testimony. And I said, that's about what I said. But as we went and we traveled around, let me tell you, the pictures that you saw were just a glimpse of what we experienced. Those pictures cannot, in no way, nor can the words that I say, explain how the Spirit moved and what we experienced in Romania. But throughout the trip, Craig numerous times asked if I would give my testimony. And I kind of just avoided a response, or said, I'll think about it. So eventually it got to the point where he said, hey, you're going to give a testimony. And I did, and it was a little bit easier than I thought it was. I spoke at the church in Lupsha. It was easy because nobody in the congregation really understood what I was saying. We had a translator, which he did a pretty good job of translating Texan. But as I was coming here this morning, tired last night, got in at 4 o'clock, was really looking forward to some sleep, and I was still looking forward to sleep about 6 o'clock this morning. Got up rushing the kids, and Craig had asked us to meet him early for service, so we kind of talk about our game plan, and I still hadn't decided on what I was going to say. So we take 2 cars to church, and Charlie comes with me, and still don't have anything to say. But as I was driving and I stopped at one of the stoplights, I kind of looked down and it had like a little pamphlet sitting there, a Billy Graham. I don't know what it was from. It was just sitting on the console of the car, and I was reading through it. And one of the things jumped at me on the 3rd line. It just simply said, share Christ with others. And Craig asked us numerous times, why did God send you on this trip? And I kind of struggled with that. I was more selfish on what I expected the mission trip to be. I expected, hey, I'm going to serve. I'm going to go swing a hammer. I'm going to go feed kids. And that was my impression of what we were going to go do on a mission trip. But as the days unfolded, God kind of revealed what his plan was, I think, to all of us. And to me, it was simply hey, we're here to share Christ. And that's what I came to understand, and was God gave me out of this. And so one of the things I had the opportunity to do, Craig spoke with me earlier before we left, and was pretty excited about communicating with the school there in Severine. And he explained that the missionaries there had never had the opportunity to go into the school. And I just thought, hey, that's cool. It'd be nice to see what another school looked like in another country. And so for me going, it was kind of selfish. Hey, I get to go sightseeing. I get a chance to go into the school. But as we got closer, I realized, and looking back and reflecting, really last night and today, as Monica spoke, as Craig spoke, and as we kind of spoke in the youth, I still got so many thoughts, so much going on in my head that really don't have enough time to explain all of it. But as God revealed himself in that school and the opportunity, and just to speak with the faculty, the director of the school, we walked in there and we donated a projector and some dry erase markers. And just to see the joy in his eyes when we presented that to him was an awesome thing. I wish I would have had an entire month to sit there and talk with the faculty. Some of them spoke English. I was lucky enough to, the lady that you saw sitting next to me or standing next to me up there, she was their English teacher, so she taught English classes to the Romanian students. So we had the opportunity to speak and talk a little bit about Romanian schools. But that day for me was such a whirlwind. Every time I got to the point where I could actually speak with someone, they were dragging me to the next thing that they wanted to show me. And everybody there was so excited to have somebody from the U.S. that was interested in their school and their students. As we went through, I got the opportunity to speak with other faculty members and go into some classrooms. The kids were excited. You could see in their eyes how excited they were to have us there, and how much pride that the faculty had and the director had that we were actually in his school. And as we went through, we went to this one classroom. I guess they were probably about 12, 13-year-olds. They're about 6th grade, I believe. And there was an English class where they were teaching them English. So I asked, okay, can any of you speak English? And before the words came out of my mouth, this goofy-looking kid sitting on the front row raised his hand up so fast that he came out of his seat. His name was Victor, and he was extremely excited about being able to talk to an American in English. So the teacher let us interrupt this class, and that's a big deal if you're a teacher, somebody interrupting your class, or a principal, somebody interrupting the entire educational process for a day. I know I'm not for that. So I was very grateful that they allowed us the opportunity to do that, and I explained that to the director, and he nodded his head profusely, and he was like, yes. So we appreciated him. Anyway, Victor, he was so excited. He took me around to everybody in his classroom and introduced me, and we spoke and asked and talked about what teenagers do, and they're just like our teenagers. Surprise, surprise. But we had the opportunity in there that they presented us a performance, the same performance that they put together to go compete in Vienna, Austria, as a European competition that they showcase the talents of their students. And their students' talents are phenomenal. As artists, singers, musicians, everything they did, they took so much pride in what they do. Now, with that said, they plucked these students away from their homes, basically, from around different small villages and selected them to be at that school. So they were in no doubt talented students. But to look at the school when we walked up to it, it's just broken plaster, brick, concrete. From the outside, you can't tell it's a school. It doesn't look like a school. The walls, no air conditioning. And as we kind of finished up, they performed for us. They were grateful and thankful. I was so excited. I think everybody was moved by their performance. Wednesday night, I think at the youth up here, we're going to show some of those videos. So if you're interested in seeing some of that, please come up and watch that with us. But just to think, as a principal, 90% of my job is to listen to complaints. But looking at our football field and, worried about, the grass isn't green enough this year, the football team didn't perform as expected, the basketball team didn't go 3 rounds instead of 2 rounds, our test scores aren't where they need to be. Whatever our minor insecurities are or what we're thinking about, me as a principal, and I look and they're simply happy to get a projector. As we walked out of the place where they performed, a little bitty room, you probably could have fit in this little corner of our sanctuary where they did all their performances. No air conditioning, but they liked heat. We walked out and saw where the kids played, where they had recess or they played soccer, which is their sport, or football, sorry. It's just rubble and concrete and broken up asphalt. And they're excited to have it. So I was pretty moved by that. But the thing that got me was we had the opportunity to invite these kids, the faculty, everybody, to come to our Wednesday night service. And so Craig had decided we're going to partner with the church in Severine and do Wednesday night youth, kind of like how we do Wednesday night youth. So they come in, and these kids had invited everybody they knew to come to that service. And as we're going through, Craig had asked me to take pictures throughout the service and watching these kids. And we had kids that were 17, 18, 19-year-olds. I don't know where they came from. They didn't really look like students. They just looked like, kind of looked like thugs in Romania. But, you know, they sat front and center right there. And I think they heard about the free pizza, and they were probably excited because they saw all the beautiful girls there in the service. Some of them are, some of them Romanian. But, you know, they were there. You could tell they really hadn't ever been in church, because when they prayed, they were just talking loud, getting up, moving around, doing all this. I'm like, stinking teenagers. Why can't they get this? And, you know, I'm a principal, so I just wanted to go tell them to sit down and be quiet. But as the service went on, there were two guys that stuck out to me as I was taking pictures. I could see how the Spirit moved in that congregation with those kids as they were introduced to Christ and the love that He has. These two kids did not take their eyes off of Craig. Craig was speaking in English. Sammy, he was translating for us, but they weren't paying attention to Sammy. You know, they had their eyes on what was going on in front of the stage and listening to the gospel. And as we ended the service, Craig did an altar call. And again, I was kind of taking pictures and watching around. And before the words came out of Craig's mouth, not much to the translator, the first kid that jumps out of his seat that says, "I believe in Jesus Christ," was Victor. Same kid, charismatic, excited. He jumped out of his seat and said, "Hey, me, take me." And that was just awesome to see that. And later on, I heard Craig talk. We kind of did a debrief, and 7 kids that had not been in that church before came to accept Christ. And as I reflected on those things, my expectations of what the trip was prior to me leaving, it simply spoke to me that, hey, we're there just to share Christ. That's it. That's it. So I want to thank you all again for those of you that prayed for us and gave us the opportunity to do this. I greatly appreciate it.
You know, I wish everyone could have walked around with Chris and I and missionaries through the school. I don't think I've ever seen him as excited. He's like a kid in a candy shop, just walking through there, talking to all of the students and the teachers and everything. And it was a great time in there. Look, I know we're getting close to 12, but I'm going to go ahead and have Lily and Dylan come up. And I want them to share with you what God did in their lives this week. And very excited, obviously, to have them here. If you don't know Lily, Lily is our office manager here at the church, and she keeps us all in line as much as she can. And Dylan is her husband. And so, you guys, there you go.
Okay, so I didn't really have a job going into this. You know, Chris was there because he's the principal, so he was going to kind of be that bridge between the church and the music school. Monica was in charge of all of the children's things. I just did all of the logistic stuff with Craig before we went. So we get there, everything's good. Sunday, we find out that their Awanas is at the same time that we were supposed to go to the service in Lupsha. So Craig said, we need some of you to stay back and do Awanas. Love kids. My forte, let me do it. So I find myself, it's me and the youth. And those are not my forte. Youth scare me. So I was like, all right, God, I see what you're doing. Take me out of my comfort zone. Put me with these guys. So youth, if you went and you are in here, please stand up if you were with us in Romania. Can everybody please clap for these guys? Y'all can sit down. I forgot to tell them that at the 9 o'clock service. I walked into the room and I told them, all right, guys, we've got to come up with a story. We've got to do games. We've got to do music. And I need some testimonies. There's 4 things. I need you guys to do this. All of them. I'll do the I'll do music. I'll come up with games. I didn't have to do any of it. They all stepped up and they were all willing. Thank you. And is it on? Oh, it is on. Hi. Okay. So they all stepped up and they were all willing and ready, and they were like, when do I do it? How is it going to go? What do you want? I didn't have to do anything. They just did it. And so we're in Awanas and we're playing games with the Romanian kids, and we have no idea what they're saying. And Sammy, who was our translator through the whole week, he wouldn't speak in English. He made them try to figure out how to play all of these games with the Romanian kids without any English. And they did it. And they played, and they just meshed with them. They communicated with the kids, with the teenagers. And it was just a blessing to me to see our kids taken out of their element, away from electronics, away from everything American, and just be kids and just be a part of what we were doing there. And I am so incredibly proud of them. And I love them. I like them now. It's so great. But another thing that just really, really touched me was in all of these churches, all of the women and men and children, they just were there for God. It didn't matter what they were wearing. It didn't matter what the person next to them was wearing. It didn't matter that there were 15 children screaming on the back row. Mama had them. This woman over here went and got them. It didn't matter. There was no judgment. It was just about Christ. And we were all there for the same thing. They're singing in Romanian, and I'm singing in English. We know all the same songs, and we're worshiping the same God. And it was just awesome to be there and to be a part of it. And I thank all of you for praying for us and allowing us to do that.
I'll be short, I promise. So I, like my wife, wasn't really tasked with anything going into this. I'm more of a people mover. That's what I'm good at. So I tried to assist Craig in making sure all the bags got from here to there and back, which they did. This trip for me was a real eye-opener. I grew up in a pretty small church here just outside of town. And we've been here for a little while now, so we've kind of gotten into the swing of things. While we were in Romania, we had the opportunity to visit a really small church in a town called Lupșa. And when I say small, I mean 25 by 15 room. There was one picture on the slideshow, and it doesn't really do it justice. There's about 5 pews on one side of the room and maybe 2 or 3 on the other that are stuck around the fireplace. Rather warm, rather pungent, but it was an awesome experience because we sat in a room in what was a house for the mother of our sponsor missionary here in Romania. This little sweet old woman who had nothing in the world, but she offered her house, and they used that as a church. And it's in this picturesque little valley. I genuinely don't think a picture would do it justice. The house is up on the side of the hill, and it's out in the middle of nowhere. The bus couldn't even fit in town. That's how small this place is. And to be in the building with 35 people maybe crammed into a small little building, and to witness people who have nothing at all in this world other than faith was humbling, to say the least. It brought me to my knees.
Every soul, every beating heart, every nation and every